the next speaker will speak about anime and NFTs. Please welcome Robek. Thank you.
All right. I'm not going to stand at this. Hello, everybody. My name is Robek. Some of you may know me like for a variety of things. I've been active in the space since 2017. If you know me for that, you're probably that one person there. For a project known as Curio Cards, I was an artist during that, and over the past 5 or 6 years, I've been building and working with people across the entire space. But in 2021, in the beginning of the year, I was just mindlessly scrolling a chronological feed of NFTs and found some anime art that was super cool and super unique in a way that I haven't ever seen. And from there, some of you may be here and know me as a guy who has collected too much anime. So today I'm not going to talk about anime as like an investment thing or anime as like, you know, this is something that everybody needs to get into, but I wanted to talk a little bit about why it's popular, what the scene looks like in NFTs, and where I kind of see it growing from here. So, long time ago, when the internet was young, we had BBSs, we had anonymous image boards, and there are cultures that grew that I would say are web native. These are not things that just because they are web native grew out of the web, but their popularity arose through it. Anime is one of these. Maybe. Now, I was just talking about how I was going to win the clicker. Okay, so the 3 foundational web cultures, and I'm not going to use blockchain as one, are memes, gaming, and anime. Anime kind of grew in prevalence because if it was like the early 90s or even the early 2000s, you know, there wasn't a huge selection. It wasn't like a mainstream thing. So it did have an international audience, and the way to find and discover new anime was by scouring these message boards and trying to understand what's new, what's hot, and a lot of that stuff evolved into memes. I'm sure you've been on the internet before, and you've probably seen frogs as profile pictures. You've probably seen anime girls as profile pictures, and you've probably seen TF2 characters as profile pictures. These are online identities that people resonate with, and if you've been in any of these talks about NFTs, I'm sure you've seen people say, it's all about the community you're with. It's all about this. It's all about that. And this holds very true. So when I started discovering really cool anime art, I was surprised that there wasn't a pretty vibrant scene. There were some earlier projects like Y-Fusion or Woo Crew that came out of the anime space, but generally the one-to-one fine art stuff wasn't as prevalent. So I'm going to talk really quickly about what do people do with collections. I've written some pretty long articles about like the different kinds of mindsets of collectors, or like why people are drawn to collect things. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Dad's hobby room. It may be in their basement or a spare bedroom. And what's the utility of that room? Well, it's you have your friends over for dinner and you say, hey, do you want to come down to the basement and see all my cool jerseys and, you know, signatures of celebrities and baseball players? Today, the modern equivalent, I would say, is the streamer's room. If you're a gamer, you know, like how much RGB do you have around? Are you sponsored by Red Bull? Does your chair lean all the way back? But with otaku, you know, this is what our rooms look like. Well, not all of us, but some of them. So, an otaku for years, even as far back as the 80s, you know, buy statues, buy action figures, buy pillows to keep them company. And because anime is now one of these like foundational like internet cultures, we all live online anyway. So what is the online analog of this? How do we go and show, you know, we love anime to these people? And the metaverse or Web3 or even, you know, just the like somebody's wallet is a great way to present like, hey, I actually have shared ownership of this space, this hobby, and like I want to see it grow. I think one of the interesting parts about anime as fine art or one-on-ones in the space is that none of the collectors that I know or people that I collect these pieces are doing it because they think it's a speculative investment. There's a really unique mind share when it comes to anime collectors and artists where people, you know, anime is traditionally a commercial thing. It's hyper stylized. That makes it easier to draw, makes it easier to animate. But we don't really see a lot of fine art things. How do you combine anime with DALL-E? How do you combine, you know, like postmodern anime like Warhol or something like that. So, yeah. Tons of the people in the anime space are doing it because they feel a genuine connection to the artists. The artists are talking generally with the collectors, and it's grown into this kind of like counterculture movement. Consistency has been key if you're an artist in this space. If you draw something and you put it out there, obviously people have probably talked about this through all these sessions. You can't just expect somebody to go get it. But a lot of these platforms do have chronological feeds, and if you do due diligence, you can start to discover some unknowns. And I think anime actually has a lot more visibility when it comes to a collector discovering somebody who's smaller versus having to go knock on collectors' Twitter doors and be like, hey, buy my art, because there are people looking for it every day. And what I mean by this, I'm going to show a bunch of charts, and I'm not going to be able to explain what they mean, but I can summarize them, okay? So, in general, and I'm just looking at Foundation as a platform because this is where we kind of grown out the one-on-one scene, anime accounts for about 25% of the overall volume on the platform. And it's been that way since, I would say, July of 21. And on average, anime art sells for about 110% more than any other kinds of pieces on the platform. Most of this is due because artists are consistent in their output. Collectors are consistent in that. We do have a little bit of a FOMO game where, it's like, oh, I'm never going to be able to collect this artist because, this guy, Palace, is collecting them, or Mr. Spoons here is collecting them, or Robek bid on this thing again. So it creates, a really interesting drive. In general, like the bid volume, bear markets, hype markets, none of it really influences anything. You'll see a big spike here when big collections like Azuki come out, where people are like, oh, we suddenly need to speculate on one-on-one art, but a majority of it's just been consistent across the board. One of the interesting parts of the anime market, too, has been that with price fluctuations, artists aren't over here trying to be like, oh, 1 ETH is 1 ETH. If I change my art pricing or something like that, the collectors are going to kill me. The collectors have collected them because they want to see what an artist can do if they are given an opportunity to create whatever they want. Not like create whatever I want. If you're familiar with the more traditional digital art world right now, and the ones that are not huge fans of the NFTs, and ironically, it's a lot of Western graphic art, so comic book style people. They'll say, well, if you want to support an artist, why don't you just pledge to their Patreon? Or why don't you commission them to draw the furry art that you want and not necessarily what they want to draw? So what's come out of this is like this really cool renaissance of anime finally positioning itself in a way that is like unique and one-on-one. So in the background here, there's a piece that I've collected by an artist named 0010. I'm going to talk a little bit about him because I'm kind of a simp for him, but he's an artist out of Brazil. He was the first anime art that I collected in the beginning of April 2021, and he was selling for under like 0.7 ETH. Over time, he's grown in notoriety. He doesn't release a lot of pieces frequently, but more and more collectors are like, wow, your style is amazing. This is really cool. I've never seen motion like this in a piece of anime art. And now his pieces sell on average between 16 to 25 ETH, and secondary sales are always above 25 ETH for his work. And this is just one example of an artist that succeeded in the space, and there's many, many more. And I have to iterate, or like some word, not iterate, but like really hammer it in that the coolest part of the anime stuff is not necessarily even buying it and displaying it. It's seeing how these artists are growing. There's multiple groups in the space that are working on artist advocacy. Uwu Crew, from a development perspective, has helped tons of anime artists launch their own projects. Interestingly, outside of like bigger mainstream things like Azuki, most anime collectibles come from a reason of needing accessibility. Because when you have an artist like 0010 who's grown to 25 ETH, people are like, well, he shouldn't saturate the market with collectibles. But if you're wanting to draw people in, some of these people that are like, you need to pledge $1 on Patreon, you're not going to do it by excluding their accessibility to this stuff. The way to do it is by giving opportunities to collect this work in the same kind of parody realm, whether it's edition art or collectibles. So you'll see popular anime artists shift over after sales to a 10K project or a 5K project or whatever, and we have support networks within the space that will help them get that out there, and the people buying it are people that want it because they love the way it looks, not because they think they're going to sell it down the road. And that does bring in new people. We have another group that I'm part of called Weeb3 DAO, and what we're not actually a DAO, we just are, pretentious. We're a group of people that onboard new anime artists. So we have an application form. We send them money for mint fees. We don't take anything in return, but basically it's like, hey, I know this is a risk to hop into this. We know people hate you if you do on the old side, so like we don't want you to take this risk out of your pocket. So mint a piece, see how it goes. Do it anonymously or whatever. We do due diligence for it, and once they go through this application process, we send them mint fees. We also help support our scholarship artists because the space is full of scammers, and if they get hacked or they get compromised in any way, we do our best to help them migrate their assets, migrate their collection, give back a little bit to their wallets as they can, and that's been super cool too. A ton of educational materials to try to prevent that as well. And yeah, those are the two biggest ones from the development perspective and the others from the fine art one, but there are really amazing collectors in this room right now that are helping push this forward. So generally, my talk today, and I think there's a number here, I'm not sure of how long I'm supposed to talk, is about, it can transcend anime. It doesn't have to just be anime, but if we focus on the development of the artists themselves, and we're supporting them because we want to see this vision of Web3 be an art renaissance, then it would behoove us to find an artist we love, dedicate our time to supporting them over time where we can, and in the long term, I think it comes back and it will benefit all of us. So yeah, that's my general pitch. I have lots of ramblings and they're super long theses, and you're welcome to check them out, but I'm not necessarily going to tell you where they are. I might have time for questions, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know how much time I have left.
What shirt are you wearing right now?
I am actually wearing a shirt by that artist that I was showing before. It's called, he has a clothing brand called Umai. And yeah, this is one of his older pieces pre the one that I was displaying on the screen. And that one is actually in the beginning of his pushing his art further and further. If you look at his stuff now, there's a lot of Monet influence, there's a lot of Dali influence. It's really interesting in how he's married the styles together. And again, I haven't seen much like that. But now more and more artists are comfortable with experimenting with that. They're thinking about composition, not just boobs. I think that the third type of anime collector is probably the booba collector, and you've probably seen on your feeds people just why are there so many of these? But as the space continues to evolve, there's more and more focus on composition and technique and palettes, and it's been really interesting to see. So, cool. Am I out of time? All right, then I'll leave. Thank you for coming today to listen to me talk. I appreciate it. I'll see you all around probably on the internet.
Thank you.
Thanks.